I love Mike Hanson Archives.
Did you ready to run?
At least when I was in school. Wasn't the current president when you were in school, was it, Ed?
No, President's Day is a combination of Washington's Day and Lincoln's Day. It has nothing whatsoever to do with that traitorous Bill Clinton who now occupies the White House.
You're doing a good job. Good agent. I am too.
I wouldn't say that. I'm going to see if I can in the hand.
I'm just teasing. I shouldn't be mean. I apologize.
You're an agent too, right?
Yes, I am. There's no church out here. They've kept the money.
That right?
Yeah. That's right.
Pretty funny.
You're a gent.
Yeah. This is not a church. This is the money we have kept.
This is actually a drug lab, yeah.
Yeah.
You heard this ass.
I was wanting to see that what she put up, but everybody don't want to download it. They're afraid it's got a virus on it.
Wyla told me to delete it right away when you see that name on there. That's what she told me. Makeup, you know.
It's hard to keep it on, though.
You know Wyla.
Where's the drug lab going to be?
Ask Clive. Ask Clive.
I'd watch them probably recording this and say they.
You need to let me know what I need to bring.
We're painting next week and caulking more. We got to caulk everything.
Got to finish talking before you paint.
No, but we start one side as we caulk the other side.
Get this caulk good so it's full.
Yeah, look at it.
Hey, where did the?
Yeah, it's going to be Noah's Ark. Is this the new Noah's Ark?
32 and 47.
I think it's strapped down.
It kind of looks like the Noah's Ark. You go up on the.
They don't stay. When he gets 3 or 4 years old, he's attacking you.
I hate that
My
one.
last one.
Refer to me.
If you see somebody,
Oh, he's protecting me more than my last one did.
yeah, well, they will. That's the nature of the breed.
I was moving out of a place.
You got to show him all those badges, then he knows what to say.
In the modern media Rolodex,
That's right.
this is loving, and the Chihuahua is vicious and right wing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard you say that.
Yeah, what would be the motive for that?
For what?
You're asking me, Peter?
For what?
Yeah, you're the one that was talking about the thing in
No.
the camera.
So
The
we were.
point Ed was making is, you were saying, Clive, that the neighbor said it was a 2-month. They were saying people
this
plan to be
neighbor-
gone for 2 months.
The neighbor down over the hill said they came in, I think, the first day. Well, see, he was there when all the helicopters came in and all that sort of stuff, and he heard all the shooting and everything. And he said they parked down over the hill, bunch of ATF guys. And
Love officers.
So he came out of his house, walked. He's got a big front yard, a big field, like us. He's set back off the road. So he walked all the way over the road, and as he walked toward them, they come stomping, they come up out of the ground everywhere, so they surround him. Figured he was a threat.
Yeah.
And he says, hey, my kids wanting, he says, I'm wanting to get my kids out of the house. Is it over? Is it safe to go, to town now or something? He says, my kids are scared. And they told him to go back to the house, pack his bags, and be prepared to stay gone for 2 months. He says, hey, I got cattle, I got animals to feed. So they made his whole family move out of the house.
Did they pay him? Pay it all?
They made his whole family move out of the house, and he would have to come to the roadblock up the other end here every day, and they would escort him with 2 ATF or FBI agents would escort him back to the house so he could feed his animals, and then escort him away again.
Did they pay his motel bills?
Not that I know of. They might have, but
Is he the type
Well,
to
here's the
speak
question
out?
that
Will he speak out about it?
Here's the question that Ed was asking, Clive. And the question is, how could they know that it was going to be around 2 months? Then they send the helicopters to shoot up the water supply, the water tanks, the blue water tanks, to shoot up David's room. Do you think they meant the raid to be a so-called botched raid, having helicopters attack, having them hit the front door? Do you think the whole thing was planned? Or
I think it was planned all the way from the beginning. They told us in court that they rehearsed this thing in Fort Hood back in the December.
We got footage.
They rehearsed it, and they were supposed to have it down flat to where they could have 130 people on the floor in handcuffs, subdued. I think it was like in 2 minutes flat.
But they didn't put you in handcuffs in 2 minutes flat.
They didn't get in.
That's my point. They could, well, actually they did get in.
They got in up here.
Right.
This your fiberglass ladder back here, right?
hold on.
Extension ladder?
But the thing is that why would they shoot up the water supply right as the bullets are going through the front door?
Good question.
From the helicopters.
They didn't want us to have any way of resisting, I guess, and surviving any length.
Well, that's right, any length of time. That's the point. If they told the neighbor to be prepared to be gone for 2 months, and they come in and the first thing they do is shoot up the water supply, that's not because they're going to have a raid that day and take everybody to jail.
The thing is, they say, well, they were, they tell the public they were just trying to serve a legal warrant,
That they never brought with them.
which none of the guys that, at least the ones they put on the witness stand during the time, none of them had ever seen it. They didn't have it with them. If anybody had it at all, it was probably one of the guys on a helicopter, but nobody knew what they were supposed to be searching for.
Well, you've got a 100-man assault team. The question is, why would they have helicopters firing from the back simultaneously as the BATF agents, officers near the door?
They claimed their orders were to be a diversion.
That's what I was going to say to her.
So it's
A major diversion shooting up your water supply.
Well, it sounds to me like they were trying to get you guys, that is the Davidians, to start a firefight, like they wanted a confrontation.
For the media.
Well, I mean, Catherine Madison and others who were upstairs have said, Mike, that they saw the helicopters firing first. So.
Well, wait a minute. I saw in a movie where Catherine Madison was in the front shooting a machine gun.
Oh, made-for-TV movie? Yeah, must be true. Must be true, Mike. It was made-for-TV movie.
Well, here's the thing. They claim we were shooting a 50 caliber machine gun at them on the first day, right?
Yeah.
I says, well, if we had that and it was working, we did have a 50 caliber.
Yeah.
It wasn't a machine gun.
Barrett
And
semi-automatic.
we were told it wasn't working. It wasn't used on February 28th. I was told by several people in there. But, they've stuck to their story that we fired this 50 caliber at them on the first day. Then why would somebody be shooting at the tanks with P rifles if you got a 50 caliber? And if we fired the 50 caliber at them on April 19th, produce the tanks with the big dings in the side of it or holes or whatever.
Well, if you guys were so bloodthirsty, how could the BATF at 50 yards away back away for several minutes with their hands up?
Right. I mean, if we were a suicide cult that just wanted to go down in a blaze of glory and take as many people as we could with us, none of them would have walked off on February 28th. We could have massacred them all, and then just wait for the big showdown that came afterwards.
But there weren't even any bullet holes in their pickups or in their cattle trailers.
Well, there was. According to the evidence they showed in court, the cattle truck that pulled up at the front door, that was the second one, it had a bullet hole through the radiator, which when you put a dowel into it, it pointed directly up the road at the other cattle truck. It didn't come from an angle from the building. And also, the driver had jumped out and left the door open, and there's a bullet hole through the open door, at the top of the open door, and into the roof of the cab on the offside from the building, which means somebody over there was shooting.
Right.
From the houses, or somebody, going berserk over there. It wasn't shot from the building.
Right.
So.
Wait, are you saying that somebody could have been shooting their own agents?
Well, yeah, that's what he's saying.
I'm saying that they got bullet holes in some of the vehicles, but a lot of them, or several of them at least, not bullet holes that we could have shot. They're on the far side, away from the building.
Well, that's been brought forward in several different films, and a lot of the evidence, even the heavily edited BATF footage, shows one of their own officers throwing in some type of grenade, whether it's flashbang or phosphorus or explosive. It probably wouldn't be phosphorus.
Upstairs.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't have been phosphorus, or you would have had a fire. But let's say either a flash or a shrapnel grenade. They're a concussion grenade. They're throwing these in here, and he's shooting into the room.
That's what it appears like. They deny that, but
Well, 3 of those guys have been Clinton bodyguards.
No, all 4 of them were. Three of them were Arkansas State troopers, and the other one was Secret Service or something that was on the campaign trail.
Three that go into
they were
that
all
room
4.
came out alive. One was wounded by his own guy. We didn't shoot any of the guys that went in that window on the far side of the chapel. There were two guys that tried to get in this side that ended up dead. There's one, I think, that was over hiding behind a bolt somewhere over in the field. He ended up dead, and one of the guy at the front door ended up dead.
Yeah.
But none of those three that go in, Linda Thompson says all three of them were dead.
Yeah, she's wrong.
But
Yeah,
they
it wasn't
came out,
those three.
according to the testimony in the trial, all three of them end up getting out of that room. The only damage, any of them, including the guy that looks like he gets shot in the head, he kind of rolls over when the bullets come through the wall. He's not wounded at all.
That's his Kevlar helmet.
He's just ducking,
Right.
a reflex action. He just rolls over, then he jumps up, slides down the ladder, and
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
messes his ankle up when he hits the ground. That's the only injury he had. He's not wounded.
So he was
at
just
all.
rolling around in a fetal position like a baby, basically.
Yeah, he was. Yeah,
So Now there was a guy on this side.
like a baby.
There was a guy that went over to see. There were two ladders. Everybody concentrates on the guys that go up the right-hand side because they're trying to get in that window and they're jerking on the curtain. And you don't see what the other team did when they went over the hump.
What do they do?
They were trying to get in the window on this side. They're the ones that got shot up. We don't know whether,
Could have been the sniper teams in the
well,
house.
it could have been the helicopters for all we know. They're out here shooting up
Yeah.
at David's room, and that's where they're trying to get into what they thought was David's room. Two of these guys, I think two of them end up dead. One of them end up wounded, and he ended up rolling off the roof, from what I understand. That's the one they come around and pick up out of the courtyard here.
Where was Catherine's room at?
She was on the back toward the, over the
this is
cafeteria.
David's room, and they were shooting this away, and Catherine was looking.
They were
back this
coming
way.
in across, when I saw them anyway.
Yeah.
They were coming up near the swimming pool, the helicopters, and they,
And
she
what
said
did-
she saw them shooting into this part of the building.
What did you think when you saw helicopters?
Well,
What was your first reaction?
the only time I saw the helicopter in the initial raid was as I was going down the hall, which was out toward the driveway there, and I could see right through into the cafeteria, and there was a door out, facing the swimming pool. And as I went by, I could see this helicopter turning away. He was just in the process of turning away and doing a U-turn sort of thing. And when we went to trial in San Antonio, they got up and said, they didn't get any closer than I forget how many 100 meters or something. I says, I'm no judge of this. I'm not a good judge. I says, how far would 500 meters or whatever? They said, about a football field or something like that. I said, well, that thing was right out here over the swimming pool. I said, that seems to me a lot closer than 500 meters.
You think the jury believed it?
I don't know what
They
the
found
jury,
you not guilty.
I don't think the jury were
But they're still Branch
filled
Davidians
in
prison,
enough.
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
though they were found not guilty.
That's
Seven-
the new American way.
7 or 9, I can't remember.
Seven and
Seven
still,
of
well, there were 9. that
We've
went.
got rid of
Yeah.
those juries too in federal trials. Now we just have judges. But go ahead, Clive.
I guess, no.
Don't be an extremist, please, Stuart.
I forget what I was going to say.
I'm sorry.
About the
No, that's
distance
jury, that's
and the
jury.
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 I was going to say I don't know on each individual point that came up that the jury was qualified to know whether they were being lied to or not initially. But I know a lot of them that are pretty upset having after they find out all the skullduggery that went on in the court.
Well, that's been in the papers.
All the information that's come out since.
Yeah.
Sarah Bain has spoken out plenty of times, very upset. And,
Get her in that.
I think it was the second memorial. She came up and she brought several of the other jury people with her, and but even that jury was a bit of a farce. There were several people that shouldn't have been on that jury.
Boy, why?
Well, first of all, they
They're
whittled.
ATF agents.
No, go
First
ahead,
of all, they whittled down. What was it? 3,000 jury went down to 80 people.
Yeah.
So then they bring them out one by one and question. And the judge would ask each one, I don't want you to tell me what religion you are, he says, but would you consider yourself mainstream? In other words, we don't want any Jehovah's Witnesses, Hare Krishnas, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They weren't going to let anybody that might be sympathetic to a small group.
Yeah.
So he said, do you consider yourself mainstream religion? And so then they had this one young girl that came up and she asked to be dismissed. He says, what's your reason? She said, well, I've just had a baby. I'm breastfeeding and all that. He says, well, we're only going to be, you're only going to be on the jury from 9 until about 4. He says, you can squeeze the milk out, put it in a bottle, and have a babysitter feed the baby during the day. He says, and you'll be home by 5 or 5:30. You can feed it at night. And he made us stay on the jury. Well, that was, you might say, fine up to a
Clive,
point.
he hurt the children.
Up to a point.
They love the children.
He got away with that during the trial, but when you sequester a jury to make
Yeah.
a major decision, they don't want to be locked up for days or weeks.
Yeah.
They're going to rush to decision. And another girl that was going to night school, he pulled the same deal on her. Well, we're not going to be here tonight. You can still be on the jury, And then when the trial,
You'll have plenty of time to study.
real early in the trial, a note was apparently handed to the judge, came from the jury. People on the jury were letting the judge know that the guy that was on the jury had already said he had already made his mind up before he heard anything, that we were guilty, And so they brought this to the judge. Instead of dismissing him and say, you can't be on a jury with that kind of an attitude, they just kind of gave him a slap on the wrist and said, well, do you promise not to
Think like
say
that.
that again? Something like that, Okay, Judge, And they left him on. I mean, he's prejudiced jury.
So you're telling me that
So you got three
and
people right there that got a problem.
that's in the court record that your lawyers had a motion to get this guy out of there, but
No, I don't know that they filed a motion.
tell us the story. I mean, this is important on the record.
I'm just saying that somebody on the jury sent a note to the judge, apparently, that one of the jury people had already made statements right at the beginning that he felt we were guilty, and it hadn't even started. You know what I'm saying? He'd let them know his feelings prior to hearing all the evidence. So they informed the judge of this. But instead of kicking the guy off the jury and picking someone else, putting one of the ultimates in his place or something, they kept him on, just with a kind of a warning, you can't be saying that, and don't let, you're not supposed to have opinions without listening, and you're supposed to be unbiased and all that. You're not going to do this again, that sort of thing, And oh yeah, okay, Judge.
Now,
That was it.
what exactly did the jury rule? Not guilty on all the murder charges, correct, but that there was some firearms violations.
From what I understand, and this kind of stinks in a way, our lawyers went to the prosecuting lawyers at some point during the series. They never informed us. It wasn't something that they discussed with us. They went and they says, they said to the prosecutors, we feel that it's only fair that you let us at some point write in self-defense into this, into the charges. And from what I understand, the prosecuting attorney says, well, we'll let you write self-defense if you let us write in voluntary manslaughter. So they made a deal. So when
Without consulting you.
yeah. So when it came
No,
down,
that's an important point.
yeah, we were not asked, were we willing to cut a deal, or would we,
Then that's not
want
really
them to
valid. Then your attorney has to
Well,
get your plea.
should. But anyway, the thing is, when it came down to separating the jury, from what I understand, the judge gave the jury instructions on how to vote. And on the third count, which is apparently where the third count was having a weapon during the commission of violent crime. Going into the trial, we were told that was a 5 to 10 year sentence if you were found guilty. Somewhere along the way, when they made this deal, they put all this extra wording into the third charge. You see? And so when the jury is separated to go make their decision, the judge gives them instructions on how to vote, and I think they said there was like 90 pages of instructions on how to vote on the third count. So, some fantastic number of pages anyway. And, just bamboozled them to even wade through it, let alone understand what they were getting into. So they came up with not guilty on conspiracy to murder, which was the first charge, not guilty for everybody on aiding and abetting the murder of federal agents, but on the weapons charge, because of testimony, some of it false, some of it may be true, some of them, had not evidence necessarily, but testimony that they had a gun. Like Livingston, for instance, you get 3 ATF agents get up and say, he's the guy that shot me, or shot my friend, Well, in their initial reports on February 28th or afterwards when they're talking to the Texas Rangers. The first one guy says, well, we got out of the first truck, we ran around the north end of the building, and we just got around the corner. Here's 3 guys standing in the backyard, 2 white guys and a black guy. And the black guy was huge. And one guy says, when I first saw them, I thought they were our guys because they had black on and masks.
Oh, that's Delta Force.
Goggles, you know. He says, I thought they were our guys. But the next thing, they opened fire at us point blank. So one guy gets kind of wounded. He's got a vest on, so he just gets bruised from the ones that hit the vest. But I think he got one in the neck or ricocheted off his neck or something. So he's got a few wounds. He rolls over into the ditch over here. So when the other 2 guys jump behind the tractor and they're hiding out, they don't get shot. So one guy said, he thought they were their guys. He says the black guy was huge. Another guy says, yeah, the black guy was about 5'10". And none of them saying, well, we could recognize any of them because they got goggles and stuff on. So they said.
Did you have goggles and mask?
I never saw any of our guys with goggles, but I couldn't say.
Black uniforms? Any black uniforms?
There were people with black pants or maybe a black T-shirt or something. We didn't have a uniform per se.
Black ski masks?
No, not black ski masks.
I mean, you didn't have their type of wear.
No.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, what I've said all along, I says, okay, what they do is nobody can identify who these people are until somewhere during the siege, March the 15th or something, Livingston, David sends Livingston out with a message to the FBI. And the next thing we know, it's in the press, Livingston's the guy that shot this ATF agent. He's the big tall. Livingston's a little bitty guy, either shorter than me or no higher anyway. So I said, okay, they've got a guinea pig now. They got the only black guy that comes out of here alive is Livingston, and so he's got to be the black guy that does the shooting, even though he's small, doesn't fit the description. So then I says, well, how come they never tried to pin the 2 white guys? They never identified anybody as being the white guys, but they pick on Livingston to be the black guy, And so there was Brad Branch and myself sitting there in the courtroom. We said to our lawyers, we want you to put us on a witness stand so we can testify that Livingston wasn't out in the backyard. We saw him somewhere else in the building. We can vouch for that. He wasn't that shooter. So the judge wouldn't allow it. He says we were co-defendants, therefore we couldn't testify on his behalf, and what's more, even if we did, it'd be impartial. It'd be partial, be self-serving.
Well, I always thought you could put anybody you wanted to on the stand.
So anyway, then our lawyers filed a motion to separate Livingston from the rest of the trial, have a separate trial, and then we could testify. And that was denied, as were most of the things we asked for.
Let me stop you for just a second, Clive. On this issue of the counts, you're saying there's 3 counts. Go back through
There were
those.
several counts beyond that, but everybody had the first 3. Some had extra.
Okay.
If somebody said,
And the 3
well, I had
counts
a
again
hang
are
tag,
what?
or if like Paul wasn't even there. So he's got some slightly different counts because of the, his name's on the receipt for some guns or something. So they
Legal guns.
He bought them legally and everything. He had nothing to do with any altering or anything that they were trying to pin on us. But they, on the strength of, they claimed they found a check, a single check, not a checkbook, but a single check lying in the machine shop here after the fire with his account. So they said that showed that Paul worked in the machine shop and was changing weapons to automatic.
Okay, the question is this, a side question. During the Senate hearings, we saw them hold up a pristine MAC-90, a semi-automatic version of a Russian field weapon. We saw them hold this up and say, this came out of the fire, this is illegal. Now, there's this huge fire.
Well, one of the guns that they held up, they claimed they got out of Mike Schroeder's van, which was out the front. I can't say one way or the other whether they did or they didn't, but that's what they claimed.
But that was a legal semi-automatic rifle.
I don't know. I don't know what was in his truck, whether they got it out of his truck or not, but that was what they presented.
Well, they had a whole table of unburned guns.
Well, I don't know where they got all the unburned guns.
But, I mean, last time I
Unless they-
checked here in Texas, you're allowed to have guns.
Sure, you're allowed to have guns, but I'm saying most of the guns we had were burned up.
So they found you not guilty on the murder.
They found everybody not guilty on conspiracy, and they found everybody not guilty of murder. What the jury did, because of the various testimony that was given, like I said, whether it was true or false, the fact that we didn't put a defense on left that testimony standing, And so they said, well, we've got to, we got people saying, well, so-and-so had a gun, or this guy saying, I had a gun. And so they came up with guilty on the gun charge. And they went through the other charges, and either guilty or not guilty, depending on what they were.
So guilty in having a gun in a crime when you were found not guilty of the main crime.
Right after the jury uttered their verdict, the judge dismisses them. They're allowed to go. Both sides, all the lawyers from both sides run up to the bench and say, Judge, how can you have people guilty of having a weapon during the commission of a crime if they're found not guilty of a crime? He says, yeah, you're right, the jury messed up, and I've already dismissed them, and, if I had to find them all again and bring them back, I'd have to instruct them they made a mistake, and all they could do if they were going to change it at all would be to say not guilty, so I'll just scrap the third count. But then by Monday...
That was the end of the argument, so you could...
back them off, So then on the Monday, the feds had already filed for reinstatement of the third count, and the judge turned around and changed his mind, and on the strength of that, I think in June or July, when he came down to the sentencing, he gives them 10 years plus 30. So they were guilty of conspiracy, guilty of murder, guilty of having automatic weapons, which was never proved. Nobody was...
So they're found not guilty, but he says they're guilty.
Sure.
And that's how it stands, even in the press. I don't even deny that. It's so asinine.
They appealed that. Well, they did. The stupid lawyers didn't appeal their convictions, which I think they should have. What they appealed was their sentencing.
Maybe they weren't stupid, Clive. Maybe the lawyers weren't stupid.
Well,
Maybe
you
they
know what I mean. But they only appealed the sentencing, and so when it went to the Fifth Circuit in Louisiana, and I read the report, they had 3 different Fifth Circuit judges that reviewed the case. You can't present any new evidence in an appeal. All you can present is whether you feel that the trial you had was handled properly. Basically that's what you're appealing, is that it wasn't conducted right. So what they reviewed, what they looked at and decided was, well, here's got all this evidence. We've reviewed the evidence. We've reviewed all the testimony. And since you guys didn't put on a defense, therefore, we have to go with the evidence. And the jury found on the weight of evidence that you were guilty.
And now it's going to the Supreme Court.
What they suggested was that the judge resentenced them. In other words, to me, that means the sentence that he gave was wrong. Something wrong with it, overbearing, too much, or whatever. So they tell him to resentence, but they put it back to Smith. They don't resentence him themselves. They put it back on Smith and say, well, it's up to your discretion.
Well,
and he gives them the same amount of time.
Here's the question. We see this happen, Clive. We see them do this. It's going to the Supreme Court now. What do you think the Supreme Court's going to do?
Well, I'm hoping they'll let him out. If they'd have got, let's say they'd have got the gun charge, if it would have held up at all, and it was a 5 to 10 year sentence. These guys have done 7 years already. If you're in federal prison, you're supposed to be able to, unless you get no good time at all, if the judge refuses to let you out on good time, normally you can do 80%. In other words, in 8 years, they would have been out. But the way he's given them 40 years, these guys aren't coming out under normal circumstances. They're going to die in jail.
So
they'd be old men,
But again, back to that same point you've made. How if you're found not guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, not guilty of murder, and then the third count is
having a weapon during the commission of a crime.
Having a weapon during the commission of a crime. You're found not guilty of the crimes.
Technically, they should have been not guilty on the weapons charge.
And the weapons charge was not that the weapons were illegal, but that they were used in the commission of a crime.
Just that they had a weapon. It doesn't say you had to use them. They just had a weapon during the commission of a crime. But, like I said,
like armed robbery.
It doesn't matter whether you used them or you didn't.
So that's like saying you're armed at your house.
Graham Craddock never, he admitted to him that he had a weapon, but he never used them the whole time.
Well, again, just to boil it down for people that are watching this, if we do air it, Clive, they're sitting there saying that you're not guilty, but then they're still saying that you're guilty of having a weapon during the commission of a crime?
They would try to look at the evidence or what they considered the testimony that was presented. You see what I'm saying? And their lawyers didn't really put on a defense.
But that's ridiculous.
Sure, it's ridiculous.
Who are your lawyers in all of this?
My lawyer was Dan Cogdill out of Houston.
What do you think of Dan?
Good lawyer, but he told me right off the bat he wasn't there to defend David. He wasn't there to defend the whole group. He was there as my defense, and he got me off. But
Who was the so-called lead attorney? Did the judge appoint a lead attorney, lead counsel?
probably if anybody had seniority or leadership, it would have been Mike DeGuerin.
Do you think the defense was?
I don't know.
Do you think the defense was compromised?
I think they were compromised by the fact that the judge wouldn't allow any money to bring in expert witnesses, to do anything.
What do you mean wouldn't allow any money?
He wouldn't. He demanded that we all wear suits and tie. He wouldn't even give us any money to buy a suit and tie. I didn't have any clothes. All my clothes that were here were burned up, and the ones I was wearing when I came out, they cut off with scissors. So
Did he hold you in contempt for not wearing a suit?
No,
I did wear a suit, but he wouldn't. Our lawyers requested that there be money allotted for us to get
For your defense.
experts, for defense, for bringing in a different situation, and he refused all that.
How much did the government spend?
Millions, probably. They brought every little mom and pop gun dealer from all over the United States that had anything to do with it, whether they sold us a book or whether they sold a gun or what. They brought them all down to testify, paid their hotel.
As if that's something dirty to sell guns at gun
I was
shows.
surprised. I thought gun dealers were kind of like, militia with camos and gun belts hanging all over them at a gun show sort of thing. And I'm thinking, whoa, have all these gun dealers. But when they came in, they were little grandmas and grandpas trying to put their kids through college or something.
What is it like, Clive? What is it like to have Judge Walter Smith engage in the criminal actions that I think are cleared, at least clear to me, Alex Jones, and I'll put that on the record. To see the judge Walter Smith engage in this criminal activity and this obstruction of justice and this huge railroad. Now, Clive, to have him refusing to recuse himself in the civil case where you're trying to take action, get back your good name, you lost your daughter, you lost your friends. After all of this, he will not recuse himself. I remember 7 months ago when he was all acting like he was going to be Mr. Goody Two-Shoes. You said on my radio program, and I agreed, that you think it's the same old fraud all over again, just more acting.
I think it's more of the cover-up. He's still playing the same role he played 7 years ago, or 6 years ago.
So what do you think of Judge Walter Smith?
I don't think much of Judge Walter Smith, period. But what I can understand is how the media or the courts or whoever has any authority in this country can look at the evidence of this man's performance, both in the trial and since, and say that this guy is unbiased. I don't see how anybody, including the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, can say, well, this guy is not a biased judge.
How can they call former Senator John Danforth an independent counselor, an independent investigator, when he's appointed by Janet Reno, the Attorney General, to investigate Janet Reno, the Attorney General?
Well, I think they can call them whatever they like in this country because they tend to screw the English language up pretty good. They take the meaning away from words, and things don't have the same value as they used to when we were in school.
Would you say to people out there they better watch the words and better see what's...
Well, I'm saying, there's a lot of catchphrases, a lot of double talk, there's a lot of deception and covering up, and I don't know what the real meaning of the word independent is in their mind, but I know what it means to me, and I don't know whether he fits the bill. Let's put it that way.
Clive Doyle, were you guys operating a speed lab out here?
No, we weren't.
I've been told...
We were totally against drugs.
Well, I've been told by the surviving Branch Davidians like yourself, David would have somebody thrown out of here if they were doing drugs.
People that had done drugs or having a problem, whether it was drinking, smoking, or whatever, that wanted to come here and make a new start were invited to come. But if the temptation got so great that they couldn't resist, they were asked to leave. Yeah.
So drugs were not allowed out here?
No.
And
what had gone on prior to our, you might say, being in charge here was that way back in the 80s, mid 80s, there was lab. George Roden had invited some former prisoners to come out here, and gave them pretty well free rein to do what they liked, and they had a pornography ring and a drug lab and stuff, from what I understand. When David came here, when we came back and got our property back in '88, some of this stuff was found, which we handed over to the sheriff's department.
So it was pretty clear, at least with the locals, that you guys were anti-drug.
They all knew our position. We had a good rapport with the sheriff's department. They used to come out here and fish. They come out here and trade car parts.
Use a shooting range.
I don't know about the sheriff's department doing that, but we didn't have a shooting range. We had a heap of dirt out there, which people would stick a tin can on, or some blocks of wood, and maybe try out shooting a little bit, but we didn't have a shooting range. We didn't have military training camp and all that kind of stuff that you hear.
Well, I mean, for me, shooting range is a term backyard.
Well, what I said, we didn't have targets. We didn't have, measured distances or anything. And most people...
Clive, why do you think the government attacked you guys? Clive, why do you think the government...
I think there's a lot of...
I'm sorry.
I think there's a lot of reasons...
I messed you up. Start over again. Go ahead.
I believe that the attack was on various levels. I think that the ATF had an agenda. I think that the government, this government wants to take over and take away the freedoms of everybody, had an agenda, and this was part of their plan. But, you hear a lot of stories about what was going on in the ATF with sexual discrimination within the department, the stories of them being dissolved or reabsorbed into another agency. You've heard all those stories. But
did you ever hear about their Klan meeting when they got caught?
From from our point of view, I believe that, like the Bible says, there's a devil out there, and the devil wants to do away with anybody that's trying to improve their lifestyle, to do better. You start studying the Bible, you're already under suspicion and suspect, and the devil wants to get rid of those kind of people. And unfortunately, there are people that lend themselves to bringing that about. When it says the devil goes to make war against the saints, it could be supernatural, but I think it's done through human beings that, allow themselves to be directed in that line.
So puppets. Mm-hmm. Well, thanks, Clive.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Clive, I was going to ask you a question.
You didn't get a chance to.
No, I know. Alex turned this into an interview.
Well, he's over here talking about it.
Yeah, no.
Now he's in interview mode. See, now Clive's real serious. Clive, relax like you were sitting back.
Well, you don't have to be out here, Clive.
Go ahead.
No, it was just a question about on that day, the first day when they came in shooting. And you had that semi-automatic 50 caliber that you said wasn't working. But was there any evidence that the feds were shooting 50 caliber rounds? I mean, did you see 50 caliber holes in the building at all?
No.
Because Catherine at one point said when she went out that on March the 2nd or whatever, there was some kind of like a huge hole in the front door.
Well, there was some holes in the front door, but I mean, they had shotguns. They had MP5s or whatever. They had handguns. I don't know what all they were shooting per se. I know what they claimed they had, whether that's truthful or not. We know there were snipers across the road. What they were shooting, we don't know.
Right.
But what, after the initial raid and the adrenaline kind of calmed down and everything, and we're beginning to hear on the radio the stories that they're putting out, to the media, like, they were shooting all kinds of stuff out in 50 caliber. Mm-hmm. I knew we had a 50 caliber. David had showed it one night, one of the meetings. And so I went to a couple of the guys. I think I asked, a couple of the guys that were upstairs where the 50 caliber was supposed to be. I says, so what's all these stories about us firing the 50 caliber at them? One guy says, the 50 caliber was never used. He said it was sitting over in the corner or something. Never got used. I asked somebody else about it, and they says, 50 caliber couldn't have been used because it doesn't work. That was two different people telling me that. And so I accepted them. I got more reason to believe our guys than I do these liars, So, like I said, if we had it, and if it was automatic, and if we were shooting at them on the first day, then on the last day, they got all these tanks busting through into the building. Why didn't we use it on them then?
Right.
And if we were shooting, which they claim we were on
Yeah.
April 19th, how come they don't play these bug tapes they're supposed to have?
Yeah.
They got all these voices from all over the building. They've only got one bug tape, they said, that works, but yet they're supposedly picking voices up from upstairs, downstairs, in the foyer, all over the place.
Yeah, but they already, I think, it was about 3 or 4 weeks ago, they already said that was like all spliced together and tampered with, and
But even
it's
so,
not even a real
If
tape.
it's only, even though it's spliced, if
Yeah.
it's only from one bug, you're not going to hear voices from all over the building.
That's right.
And if it's that good, then you should have picked up the 200 shots they claim we fired at the tanks.
That's right. Yeah.
My testimony is that I didn't hear any shooting from inside on April 19th.
Yeah, but did y'all put like or make Molotov cocktails or any of that sort of stuff?
There was talk about it. I never saw any, but
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
it was all. I mean, when you're in this kind of a situation,
Tanks running around.
you know,
War.
when you're getting all these threats, like we were being told even before April 19th, we don't want anybody in the tower.
Uh-huh.
If we see anybody in the tower, we'll consider that a threatening gesture. We don't want anybody looking out the windows. We don't want, they start making demands more and more as they got to the end. And like I say, that develops an attitude. I can remember talking to people in the chapel saying, well, if they do come in with the tanks, like, how do you stop a tank, for crying out loud? And of course, you're thinking all kinds of things. What you could do, stick a crowbar in the truck.
Clive, what about them? What about them also calling a few days before the final assault, the final attack, where they told you it wasn't an assault, with classic doublespeak? Clive, what about them calling and saying you better have fire extinguishers? Or do you have any fire extinguishers?
That call, from what I understand, was made, I'm not sure of the date, a few days before, I guess, before the last day. And Steve Schneider, I believe, was on the phone, and they asked him, did we have any fire extinguishers? And he didn't even know. So he kind of asked somebody to run and find out. And then he tells them, well, I'm told we got one. And the guy is supposed to have said, well, you better get yourself some fire insurance. But, that's not a first-hand story. I mean, it's other than listening to the tape.
Oh, it's on the tape?
It's on the tape, yeah.
Clive, the reason I was asking so much about that 50 caliber on that first day is, wasn't it on the first day when that one helicopter was shot down, or was that on that was the first day, right? It was shot up
all
anyway.
3 helicopters claimed that we.
No, there was one that actually.
None of them. Well, I don't know whether it couldn't fly again. I don't think it was totally crippled, but it did take some shots. Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason I ask that, if there is any evidence, like if they use 50 calibers, maybe on the other helicopters or something, shooting up the building, or if there's any 50 caliber fire at all, is because.
My question is that night vision?
Yes.
You can take it out of night vision because there's enough light there. Take it out, and I'll do this.
No.
We'll let Clive quit, because I want to make sure I got something where it's not just that.
Well, let me just.
Clive's going to be green on this. There, Clive, now you can think
That
about it.
felt
No,
great
this
on
is
the
a-
28th. February 28th, I felt a little green.
Okay, hold it.
And if you do a bright flash, you kind of ruin it, don't you?
Yeah.
Well, it's not film, it's just tapes, it's digital tomorrow.
Yeah. But yeah, what.
Talk, Clive, we've got the light on.
I just want to get this question. It's you remember Mario Boynkin, the guy, the pizza shop guy from Austin?
Yeah.
A buddy of his is the maintenance chief, or was at that time maintenance chief for those helicopters out at Fort Hood. And I think it was the day after, or 1 or 2 days after that, when they assaulted the place here, Mario went up to Fort Hood, talked to this guy, and the guy pointed out a 50 caliber hole in that helicopter. And Mario told me that he stuck his finger into that hole, and he recognized it as being like a 50 caliber size.
Well,
so that's what I was curious,
I
if
don't-
they even shot their own helicopter down.
I couldn't, vouch for that. They maintained during the trial that we'd shot at the helicopters, and it's quite possible that some of the guys did.
Well,
but
I
I don't-
would have if they'd
you
be
know,
shooting at my house.
But I've seen some footage. A friend in Houston showed us some footage that he had of where these helicopters are flying. They're coming in, approaching the place, and then it has this footage where they land in a field out here somewhere. I guess it was down over the hill near this neighbor's house, and they get out and point right at the hole, and I said, "There's something wrong with this footage." They know exactly where the
No
hole's at before they
kidding.
even get out.
No
I mean, I
kidding.
said, "Have they done this? Is this the second time they've looked, or not?" But it almost looks like it was staged for the camera because there's a guy
That's-
taking this picture. They all get out of the helicopter. Oh, look, 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 look.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, that they didn't actually shoot the helicopter down, but they put
They
holes
landed
in it.
in order to get some
And
footage.
and 50 caliber holes just so they could say that y'all had a 50 caliber machine gun.
50 caliber crowbar. Punch 3 or 4 holes in there. 50 caliber holes, aren't they? You got a 50 caliber crowbar. You got a 50 caliber hole. Used to do that with a pencil. I was in the army. Used to do that with a pencil. That's a 30 caliber.
Well, Clive, you
pencil.
said earlier if they want to burn this down together, they're going to have some trouble, aren't they?
Yeah, we'd even have trouble.
With all that no burn.
I tell you, like I've said, if God wants it to burn, it'll burn no matter whether it's made of brick.
Amen.
If God doesn't want it to burn, no matter what they do, it won't burn.
Amen.
And that's what you have to put your trust in.
That's right.
The final bottom line is whether you believe, in God or not. There's a question in the Bible, or a statement, I should say, that says, if the builders build without God on their side, then they build in vain.
Yeah.
So that's one reason we need to be considerate of how we act and what we talk about and everything else while we're in there. This is a special place, it's not just any old building sort of thing. And
Extra special place. The American people.
so anyway, did we answer your question?
Yes, I believe so. Clive, I think that's the answer, actually, is they put those holes there themselves.
Well, I'm not swearing to it, but my first question on seeing the footage was, there's something wrong with this picture.
Mhm.
These guys know where every hole is when they're just jumping out like they've just landed. And this is the first time they've, got out of the plane. I'm going, you may know you've taken some shots, but you're going to have to look for them. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to be able to go, that. That's where we got hit, I'm going, this is a staged deal just for the camera.
This so happened to have a camera there when they landed.
Anyway.
Now, Clive, they don't lie.
I don't know. Maybe they've been lying so much that it feels like standing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All their focus is.
After a while, yeah. After a while, if you lie.
I fell off. They had a church up the front gate. When I first came, I was doing a job in there one day, and the ladder slipped out from under me, and the ladder fell down, and I landed on my back on top of the ladder, knocked the wind out of me. So I was laying there for quite a while before I could get up, and I'm looking at the ceiling, and all of a sudden my brain just kind of flipped over to where the ceiling looked like the floor. Everything looked like it was the right way up, only the lights were coming up out of the floor, and the pews are all along the ceiling. Just laying there kind of dazed. And maybe that's the way they view things from a different perspective.
That's good, Clive. Thanks.
Okay.
Right after the raid, when the ATF and everybody are giving this press conference and everything, they're talking about how we'd ambushed them and we were all at the windows shooting and all that. And I'm going, wow, that's not the truth. And so I go up to my room, or I'd been in my room, and I go back to my room, and my room's intact. There's not a bullet hole in my room at all. Mine was the third window from the north end. And so I'm going, whew, at least I can't say Clive Doyle was in his room shooting at the ATF coming in, because I got no bullet holes. There's no reaction to any firing on my part, see? So this goes on all during the scene. I'm thinking, this is evidence. This is good evidence. My room's not shut up. My glass is not.
I'm cool.
Lo and behold, just before the last, maybe a week before the last, they're clearing it. Every time we'd send somebody out, they'd punish us by, tearing up the cars or tearing the fence down.
Throwing a flashbang.
Whatever. So they come along one day with the tanks, and they're bulldozing all the trees down the fence, and I had a tree right outside my window. They bulldoze that tree, and a branch comes right through the window. I go, there goes my evidence that there was no shooting on February 28th, because the glass is all smashed up,
Now, Clive, what did you think when you were told a few minutes before they got here that, hey, somebody's coming out to search the house, or the BATF, or the police, or something? What did you think was going to happen if they did come out here for a search?
You mean initially?
Yes.
And you're happy if you're a man.
I really didn't know. I mean, we knew that we were being watched from across the road for about 6 weeks before the raid. early in January, these guys moved into the house. And they started acting strange right from the start. I mean, they'd be shooting out in the backyard. When we tried to go over to be friendly, they wouldn't let us in the house, and all kinds of weird stuff going on. So we were suspicious. But I never heard David or anyone else say, hey, the ATF are watching. We knew somebody was watching us, but we thought maybe it was the immigration people, because we had people from all over the world here, and we figured they're suspicious. You know, they're watching to see who we got here. So it was no big deal. But on February 28th, from what I didn't remember, but people tell me it was drizzling or it was raining that day. All I can remember was being in my room. We'd already had breakfast, and I was back in my room. And all of a sudden, I hear a lot of people out here in the cafeteria, and I thought, what's going on? Seems to be a lot of people out there, and we've already eaten, so what's the deal? So I go in there to find out what's going on, and somebody says, hey, we just got word that somebody's coming. It's going to be some kind of a raid or whatever. And about that time, David walked in from this side. He'd come down the hall and come in the cafeteria from this other side, and basically confirmed it. He says, we just heard that, there's a whole bunch of some kind of agents coming. And he says, I want everybody to stay cool, go back to your rooms, just be calm. He said, I'll go down the front door and talk to them, see what they want, and try to talk to them. So I went back to my room. I heard him walk down the hall, heard him open the front door, and next thing he's yelling, hey, wait a minute, there's women and children here, let's talk about this. And all hell breaks loose. I mean, there's shots coming in the front door like crazy. And my initial reaction was run down the hall, because I figured there's going to be blood and guts everywhere, massacre. And I get about level with where we are, about halfway down the hall, and Perry Jones is crawling up the hall screaming that he's being shot. He'd gone to the front door with David, and he's telling me David's been shot. So I'm trying to comfort him. He's laying on the floor and screaming, and I said, hang in there, Perry, because I'm thinking there's all these other people dead inside the front door or whatever. So I go running down there, and lo and behold, there's no one inside, no one in the foyer area at all. So I run back to Perry, and I'm trying to help him. And
so on the tape, as we see the BATF from the outside firing in incessantly, you guys are just going around trying to look for people that have been shot.
Well,
You mean you guys aren't lining the windows shooting like the television shows
no.
us? I mean, like the made-for-TV movies? The movies aren't real?
There have been a lot more than 4 dead and 20 wounded if everybody had been there with a gun and an automatic weapon shooting at them. But no, that's not the case. In fact, I'd say most people were taken by surprise. Even though you were initially told somebody's coming, you don't realize that it's going to be a bloody mess. You know what I'm saying? You maybe have a little trepidation. Well, are they going to be haul us all outside? Are we all going to jail? What's the procedure? We didn't know what was going to happen. But David more or less said, well, everybody stay calm. I'll go down and talk to him. So you figure, he'll handle it, And so next thing we know, all this shooting at the front door. People upstairs, of course, are hearing the shooting from the helicopters. And so, like I say, I went running down. I find Perry shot, crawled, just dragging himself up on his hands and knees sort of thing up the hallway. I end up helping him to a bed. By the time I put him in a bed on this side of the long hallway in the men's dorm area, somebody says, Winston's dead. I said, where's he at? They said, well, he's up in his room. So I go up there, and as I get up to that end where his room is, I could hear water running. I thought, that's strange. What's that? So when I get to his door and I look in, he's laying on the floor in a pool of blood and water, and his windows all shattered, and he had these water tanks out on a platform at the back, and they were completely blocking his windows. Not like you could see in or he could see out. These big plastic water tanks were right up against his window. But what the helicopters had done, it shot into riddled all the water tanks, and he was sitting on the other side of it, and got a bullet in the head.
Was there any water coming in?
Oh yeah, it was all over his floor. The carpet was soaked with blood and water. And of course I'm trying to feel for a pulse. He was a pretty big black guy from England, had a real thick neck. So I'm thinking, is it just that I can't find a pulse, or is he really dead, And
Where was the bullet hole in his head?
I don't remember exactly. All I remember, he's laying there, and, So
How many holes would you estimate? I mean, a lot of holes, or just a few holes in the water tanks?
there was a lot of. In fact, one day during the siege, I was going by the doorway there, and I looked in, and Greg sitting, he'd gone upstairs and got all the boys' little plastic toy soldiers, little plastic men and that, and he's sitting there with a little dinky miniature blowtorch thing, trying to melt the plastic men to plug up the holes in the water tank, because we were going to try to get the pump going again and maybe fill them up with water. And I says, "You're wasting your time, Greg." And he says, "What do you mean?" I says, "Well, you're filling all the holes on the window side, on the inside." I said, "But they're riddled on the other side too. Unless you're going to go out and expose yourself and fill them up, it's still going to leak out the other side."
Now, what angle were the holes coming in?
They were coming down an angle, the high on the outside and low on the inside. There's nothing out there that, you can't say, well, there's a guy in a big building across the alley, shooting down into your room.
Because there's nothing but...
Yeah, it's sky, Not even the snipers up there, I don't believe, could have done it, because it was coming at a...
They're at the same level, that house down the road.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It would have to be from playing a helicopter or something.
So you were expecting to be brought out on the lawn and have them search through your stuff. You didn't...
I had, like I said, this was a couple of days later when the arrangement was that we would all go out. We'd all come out together. And so I went down the kitchen here and packed a lunch, paper bag of lunch, for my daughter and I. And I'm thinking, we'll all just go out and we'll sit on the lawn, and they'll come in here and search the building, get whatever they come to get. And when they're through, we'll all come back in. That's how stupid it was, naive. And but as time wore on and more people came out, they're all going to jail. You're seeing pictures on the TV of them in their orange suits and being arraigned in court and all that kind of... You go,
now,
this is not going to be simplified up.
What about later when Branch Davidians would try to come out and get papers or documents or give things to the federal government?
That was probably about, I'd say, the last week before the fire.
So even when the feds...
If somebody come out on the roof, if they come out a window or a doorway, for whatever reason, including Steve Schneider, who had already arranged over the phones to come out, and they were going to bring some kind of stuff in. I don't know whether it was the supplies for the typewriter or what. They were bringing something in a tank. They pulled up out there on the driveway. He came out the front door, walked over to them. They gave him the stuff. He turned around. He got just about to open the front door, and they lobbed these two flashbangs at him, scared the daylights out of it. But David Jones got lobbed at. We were out in the gym one day digging a hole for the potty hole, and we
For dead?
No, for waste.
Oh, okay.
So we could hear them lobbing these things out, just outside the wall. It's kind of scary, hear them go, even though they're on the other side of the wall.
Flashbang grenades?
Well, that's what I assumed they were. They sound like the same kind of noise, We didn't see those ones, but like I heard that Pablo Cohen got flashbangs, David Jones got flashbangs, Steve Schneider got flashbang. Like I
So
said,
they would call you out to give you information or give you milk or whatever and throw flashbangs?
Steve went out on you might say, an official, agreed upon rendezvous on that particular day. Some of the other guys might have just stepped out for a breath of fresh air or for whatever. I don't know.
Now, I'm sure you guys called to the negotiators and brought that up. What did they say when you said, "Hey, you told us to come out, you're throwing grenades at us"?
I'm sure Steve did, but I don't remember all the conversations back and forth. Most times when you brought any thing to their attention, to the negotiators' attention, they would disassociate themselves. Well, we tell you things in good faith, and we're the good guys, but the tactical team, we got no control over them, and they just do whatever they want to do. And
Good cop, bad cop.
Yeah. So.
Do you think it was good cop, bad cop psychology or real?
I think some of the negotiators genuinely were upset that they were losing credibility because of the actions of the people in the tanks and so forth. I think one was hurting the other's efforts.
So you think the negotiators and the troops out here actually had a little bit of a feud going, or you don't know?
Yeah, I think there's a certain amount of rivalry. I think there's, they like to throw up at David. When we didn't come out as agreed early in the piece, they made this accusation of David. Well, you're a lie. You're not a man of your word. You can't be trusted. And on one of the tapes, David brings up, he says, well, you promised certain things the other day, and now it's different, or you didn't come through for us. And well, you got to understand, we're just peons. We're just here doing the negotiating, but we've got bosses over us making decisions.
Well, then how can we make a deal with you?
And then they've got bosses in Washington that overrule them, and you just got to understand, we really don't have a whole lot of power. And David says, well, why is it that you can't understand that I've got a boss upstairs that sometimes overrules, something we've agreed on yesterday? He may say no. Why can't you understand that I've got a higher up person that I got to answer to, and yet, you want to call me a liar. You want to say, well, I'm not a man of my word. But you can cop out when your promises don't come by because, well, we got people over us.
We've heard about the hostage rescue teams, the military people mooning and flashing you guys. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was was that one reason you guys didn't?
It certainly develops an attitude. I mean, everything, even though things may or may not, I don't know people's hearts, but like at one point, the people from the Methodist home where they were taking all our kids, they sent a video in supposedly to show us how well they were treating our kids. And we got the TV blaring, and the kids have got an ice cream and a Coke and, watching videos and everything, and they're just bouncing off the furniture like they're having a sugar high, And most of the mothers that saw it were pretty upset. They're going, that is not the way we taught our children to behave. It's not that we wouldn't give them an ice cream or something, a drink, from time to time, but it wasn't their steady diet. But they thought they were being good to the kids by just loading them up with sugar and stuff. And like I said, one of the comments I heard was, this is sad, this is, you wouldn't think some of these kids just saw their mother shot or saw some of their friends wounded a few days before. And here they are, aiming for the camera and all this kind of stuff. And, like I said, the people that made the video may have had good intentions, but it was used, it had a negative effect, we'll say, on us. A lot of the parents that still had children, and they were hesitant about wanting to send them out to this kind of a situation. And the same with when, you made reference to the mooning and the giving the finger and making threats and all that. It all develops an attitude in the people that you're dealing with that, hey, these are a bunch of monsters, or these are people that who wants to give their kids.
Mike, you're yelling as loud as you possibly could.
So every situation and your moods go up and down. I mean, you're going through ration food. You're going to have to go to the bathroom on a bucket and empty it. Dig a hole and bury it or whatever. We were used to, you might say, primitive conditions compared to some people, but that was even a harder thing to have to deal with for 51 days. And like I say, everything can make you have an attitude. And so, I just, from what I remember of people's comments and stuff like that, they were not too respectful, you might say. By the time you get through the 51 days, they don't have much
a bad hair day.
Faith and confidence.
A bad hair
trust
day.
in the FBI.
Yeah, I mean, a bad hair day, pretty
well,
cranky.
I mean, like I said, we were used to hardship. The hardship was bothering us in a way, but it wasn't having the desired effect that they wanted it to have. In other words, several people that survived and came out, I know, lost 25, 30 pounds, including myself, in weight just from lack of water and food because we were on rations. But we weren't mad because we were hungry, sort of thing. We were more upset with the attitudes that were coming across the phones or the loudspeakers, things like that, the fact that they weren't operating in good faith. And plus, we're watching them every day get up and do these media briefings, 10 o'clock every morning at the convention center, and they're just lying, or they're painting a picture that's just making us look like, kooks. And so,
Clive,
like
did you ever stop?
Much respect.
Clive, did you ever stop and think that while this is going on, it's setting the stage for, hey, the government's good, we go raid bad people, we take them out,
Well, sure.
They're kooks, you're on our side, we're the winning team, kind of like a Super Bowl mentality nationwide for 51 days?
What I see with law enforcement and government agents, especially on the federal level, is that they want to be, they want to come across as the good guy. They want to be the public to believe in them. It makes their job easier. But in all reality, the bottom line is they don't give a damn what you think. But they would like you to think that they're good guys. So they'll go to a certain amount of subterfuge and lying and painting the other guy bad to make themselves look good. They'd like you to accept that image, but if you don't, they really don't care. They're going to do what they're going to do anyway. That's the way I see it.
Well, the big thing is they want to get local support because, Clive, in the last 7 years, we're coming up on 7 years, coming up on April 19th here in 2000. I've talked to so many SWAT team, police, military, government agents, talked to them across the board on the radio and off the air. They say that starting 7 years ago, Waco was the kickoff for merging the military and the police.
That was the excuse, just like, Reagan and Brady and all them people getting wounded was enough to start all this gun legislation and things like that.
What is gun control about? I mean, why do powerful governments always seek to disarm the population?
Because they don't want a population that can fight back or to protect themselves. They want subdued people. They want people that'll do what they're told, be productive slaves, basically. And they're willing to give you the football game and the 6 on a Sunday, that kind of thing, is partial reward. I mean, you take the Roman Empire. The worse it got, the more dictatorial it got, and the less their money was worth anything. They're coming up with all these games and stuff in the Coliseum, blood sports and stuff to keep the people preoccupied or, they'll say, diverted from the real issues.
And we see that happening today, don't we?
Stay tuned right here for more classics on this channel here, Hanson Archives. But to fund this station, I'm offering, if you send us $25, we'll send you a signed copy of Bohemian Grove, Cult of Conspiracy. It was forwarded by Tex Mars that just recently passed away. Also, Alex Jones has a chapter in here. And that's good. There's us in our younger days. But on the address that you see, send us $25 and we will send you a signed copy, or give us a call at 830-672-3089 and you can put it on a credit card. We'll send it right out. But that's what we need to help fund this channel, folks. So help us get all the classics uploaded to YouTube. We got hundreds and hundreds of old Alex Jones and Jeff Davis and a bunch of other patriots that we need to upload. About 25-year-old tapes.
Yes, I drove 3 nails.
Mike, because you wanted that article. I sat right here and heard you tell her to send it to me. Oh, yeah. When she said it's like that,
It's just about that deep right there. Yes, ma'am, all the way around the perimeter. That would be a good thing. Huh? Oh, Lord, I don't know. Somebody probably ate him. They stayed around the house for the longest time. I think I got rid of them. I fluffed them off on somebody. Some people used to come by.
Oh, so we have to get rid of those?
Well, just throw them upside.
Yeah, my belt is breaking. That's it. I'm taking it off.
Y2K was gonna happen.
What do you mean unskilled labor? I thought you was a cop. Huh?
Individual in their own
All the help off. Yeah, good. Thanks, Brad. Thanks, Brad. Appreciate it.
We have the uniform, which man. Because if you don't, you could throw them on the floor. Even if you don't go as far as if you just don't give them something to eat when you come home.
Get out of the way. Let's go. Come. Come here. Clyde.
Nails in the concrete?
No, we I just happen to have a few on. You got everything. No, if I didn't have it, I wouldn't be making a living.
No, with the snow burn stuff, they took a dipstick, took some stir and paint, just half and half, let it dry with the fire. 10 minutes later, so all burned off. 2 minutes later, it's still bubbling. Salt saline solution goes into the water. Huh? Fire department sprayed out like one half an old barn with it, just one half. Yeah, and then like one half of it's burnt, falls over, but there's the whole thing still there. And then like go pour gasoline on it.
Did you see that article in Dallas Morning News?
Somebody would have filled
Justice
up
Department attorneys are now saying, well, you know, we think that the tests that are coming out maybe show fully automatic weapons fire.
Well, I think that's oh, Mike. But it didn't. I don't believe what do you think?
It's just the fact that they would even say that.
We're always the big thing that's acceptable. Yeah, but
Do the test. Like,
throw it out on the ground. You know they're using Delta Force. Oh, I have an article. They admit it. They're using Delta Force for crowd control.
yeah, I remember the Seattle thing.
They have Delta Force. I've got raw footage from there. Taking some video in the crowd. Not listening. They were savage. I got I've already made comments about how it's so bad. Oh yeah, this guy's knocking the room and sticking out. One cop takes his ski mask off and goes, "That's it, I'm not with you guys."
Really?
I'm beating him. By black helicopters.
Really?
Nope. Patriotic, awesome. Yeah, but that was bad. No. I mean, he's good. Another fellow Australian, I'll be like. Yeah.
Hey, George.
Sorry, Carmel. I thought you were going to hurry him here.
Well, see, have you seen Braveheart? The real stand up against people. And then this one, yeah. I know somebody that's working on it with it. Yeah, no, it's all pure, fight the government. It's really nice.
There's a movie running on HBO right now called Resistance. Made in Australia, and it's martial law gets declared, and power leads to corrupt power and absolute power, and what are you doing? They start killing off the countryside. All great movie. It's kind of like Resistance.
It's coming down.
It's very scary. It's real scary because it's very real. Very real.
That's a movie I've wanted to make, something like that.
Check it out. It's playing right now on the satellite.
You can see the no burn.
That's it on the screen?
You can't. We put a towel in it and throw it in the fire for like minutes on end, and it just charges. It's not even burning. Good luck if you want to burn it. And we also got 10 gallons of it, right? We'll be in the tank.
Yeah, that's over here.
Comprehensive thinker too. That's really good.
I gave him
Sexual
that.
imagination. Yep, that goes into the other one.
$70,250. We need $40,000.
Don't try to avoid giving you a complete answer.
This is Alex.
Okay.
That's
Yep.
not.
You get emotionally responsive.
I
Father, writing
brought
plans
the
on what this
original
person is
copies.
subject to emotional stimuli. The writer naturally relates
How do
to
we get
people's
some
emotions.
copies
The
of it, or
constant
will
need
they
for
all
affection.
This is the first
He
weekend
can be
for
very
it.
expressive with his emotion and relates to others easily. That's
Yeah.
definitely.
Hold on a second.
It's not up on InfoWars yet.
Tell her I'm
Hey.
talking to somebody. Tell her I'll call her
Mike,
right back. Tell her it's
it's
important.
not
to
on
talk to me.
InfoWars yet.
Very-
If
very physical you.
you'll find
The
somewhere
man's
like
writing and physical activities which must
rebuildthechurch.com and go
satisfy
to
the insatiable
the
physical
Branch
desires.
Davidian Trustee
Essentially, they can be
discussion
very
board.
demanding and creative. Often creative. Comprehensive thinking is a great card. Reviewed
Yeah,
by the needle note point strokes
but
top
the
of letters.
discussion board
Lightning
has
fast minds,
moved,
able
so
to
it'll
size
tell
up
you where to go.
situations quickly. Get irritated by slow talkers. You're curious.
That's definitely true.
Little sarcastic. You got the sharp T's, but not too many. It's not huge. Very noticeable, but it is noticeable. And you know what the sarcasm means. Sharp tone. Defiance. A large lowercase letter, especially K, anywhere in the writing. This high buckle K is often referred to as the red L K. A defiant person resists others' authority, seen as resenting being told what to do, or rebellion in young people.
Alex, you never resist authority.
Very, very talkative and less connected. The more they must move their mouths. Sometimes they will talk just to hear their own voice. Very strong T-bars, which is great. High self-esteem. Reveals confidence, ambition, the ability to plan ahead. High goals, high personal expectations, and an overall good self-image. This is the key to personal success and happiness. Persistence. Strokes that double back over you had one key that did it. An end toward the right, usually located in the T in the F. This person has the quality of not giving up when confronted with temporary setbacks. He will persist until he completes the task. Self-conscious. When the second hump is higher than the first, person has a fear of being ridiculed and tends to worry what others might think when around strangers. But I guess you're so confident that it doesn't matter.
Well, no.
But it may affect you.
Well, no. I mean, that is true. I'll have a bunch of fear, and I'll just say, "Screw it. I'm going over it."
Exactly. That's because you got the high T-bar.
That's weird.
Shown by backward cross T-bar, this is self-critical. This signifies the need to punish oneself. Hold on, baby. The need to punish oneself. The T-bar shows sarcasm. The writer tends to be critical and sarcastic toward himself. And again, strong sex drive. You go way down into the other line with one of your lines. The variety in life, physical drives are strong indeed, providing lots of energy and imagination in the physical realm.
Wow. Well, thanks. That's cool. I like mine. Now, Clive, let's see. Guns taking about 7 years to do it. No excuse to kick it off. Problem, reaction, solution. Create a crisis, offer a solution. That's what they do.
The bomb.
Yeah. I mean, buildings don't blow out in a truck bomb, and a truck bomb could have done that with fuel oil.
Oh yeah, the building was blown
Overhead of Air
out.
Force
That's what
weapons.
I wanted to tell you. The building was blown out.
Building was blown out. The FBI confiscated all the surveillance cameras. They confiscated the seismographs, but copies got out first. 2 separate explosions. The diversionary out front. First small and the big ones inside. Actually, the second explosion is actually a chain of explosions. Jane Graham ran the HUD on the 5th floor. And Jane Graham saw guys planting what she said were large sticks of gray butter that morning down in the, and he goes on.
Yeah, they demolished it. Just they was taking the old building out from inside.
They wanted to demolish the whole thing, but it didn't.
Some of it
Didn't
that's
go
part of
off.
it.
And that's why they had to hold people back and go, the unexploded bombs. The media, local media didn't know. They weren't part of it. They're removing unexploded, very sophisticated bombs right now. And then I've got a video out, America Destroyed by Design, and in it we've got the newscast where they're taking the bombs out. I mean, give me a break. We got helicopters shooting. The FBI had closed circuit TVs all out here, hooked into that house, satellite back to Washington, big dish back there in the back, all 4 cameras. And they're going for an hour and a half. Yeah. Yeah, they were doing it for the enjoyment. Clinton, while it was burning.
All right, who wants to lead? Let Gene go. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
All right. God bless the Republic